called Ninja. And if you've ever been in Ninja or heard of Ninja, it kind of started in Colorado with a brokerage out there, and it kind of went on a nationwide level, and went to the classes, some of the Ninja classes, and they talked about pre-inspections and how they did them out in Colorado and how it really worked well, but they didn't really get into a lot of detail about it. And in our market, I don't know if your market's probably has some similarities to ours, but in our market, it didn't really take off too well. And I always kind of believed in it and thought it was good. So I started kind of playing around with it and talking to my sellers about it. And some of them were excited about doing them and some didn't want to do it. So I was kind of bound and determined though to try to make it work. And because I really thought it would work. And so I really felt like if people just knew how it could work, why it could work, the benefits of it, how it affects the lending part of it, how it affects really all different stages of the process, the pending process, and how it makes things so much easier, I thought it could sell. So that's kind of how the class came about. And it's been fun to teach. So you did get a worksheet, and really you don't have to fill it out. If there's things on there that you want to fill out that you think might apply to you or help you, I've always felt like when you take a class, you're getting continuing ed for the class, but you can always pick up something from the class. So if there's just one or two things that you think you'd like to try because of the class today, then that's a win for me. So as we're going along, I also like to get your feedback and your perspective on things. I'm always wanting to learn what people are doing in different markets and so on. So hopefully we can have some fun. The hour will go really fast. I don't really plan on getting through everything that I've got in the slides today, but I'll try to do the best I can, and we'll do whatever we can. I do want you to feel free to ask questions and have open discussions about things as we go along too. In our board of realtors, we've been wanting to, I teach the class down there as well, in addition to some other classes for our board. And one of the things they've been trying to do is really up the game for all of our agents and make things more professional and more realtor oriented. So we're really serving the public. And so that's one of the things that we're want to emphasize. I did a little research last year, and I don't know if you ever read the NAR profile, but they do surveys with buyers and sellers. It's a pretty long report, and this was kind of the result of what people thought about sellers and their thoughts about realtors. And as you can see, there's some that were dissatisfied with what we're doing for them, some dissatisfied. So what that tells me is about a third of the people out there working with realtors that are sellers, had a good, okay to good experience, but not a great experience. So what I want to see us do is get to where we really have a complete value package for our sellers, and we're doing everything we can for them, because again, we're fighting the for sale by owners. I think you guys are fighting the for sale by owners up in this market as well, and the for sale by owners are very strong in our market, and we want to make sure people are aware of what we do and how we do it. Okay. I always like to have a little bit of humor when we get started, and I always like to see the pictures of what the public thinks we do and how we do it, and we're all having a good time, and we're meeting our clients and in the beautiful homes and so on. And then here's what really happens. We're out there working hard, and every day is not easy. So
that's just this week for Barry.
I'm sorry.
That's just this week for Barry.
Okay, so you all can relate to sure. I know I can too. So in fact, that's me right there. Okay, so you know, the team thing is really big. So people today, you guys, as you probably know, they want it done yesterday. They want it easy. They want it as inexpensive as possible. And the pre-inspection really serves that, okay? So the way people are wired today is they want it done. And they want to have the transaction go smoothly. And the pre-inspection is going to help with that. I did a little bit of research on pre-inspections. Most deals are, you know, have an inspection of some kind, right? So it's going to be in your offer, whether you're writing the offer for the buyer or whether an agent is writing an offer on your listing, there's going to be some kind of an inspection in there. Sellers net out more money when their property's been pre-inspected. And, you know, the market now is it's a really strong seller's market. So a lot of people are thinking, well, why do I even need to do it? Because the house is going to sell anyway. In my view, a pre-inspected property is going to make it even better. So, you know, you're going to get maybe even more offers or more strong offers when that property's been pre-inspected. So I think it really just is more of a reason to get it done. So, you know, we have to overcome objections, right? So why do most sellers object? If they do object to pre-inspections, why are they? Cost, okay, what they hear from other people. A lot of sellers don't want to let anybody know about problems that they might have with their home. And you've probably seen that if you've ever sold a for sale by owner, you know, the law requires they fill out a seller disclosure, right? So you look through the seller disclosure and you see half of it's not filled out, or there's things in there that are maybe questionable about the way they answered the questions. So sellers by nature are just kind of defensive. They don't really want to disclose everything they should be. They're afraid, you know, they're just a fear of what's going to happen when I do this, okay? And lastly is in a hurry. Everybody's in a hurry. They want to get their house on the market. They want to move yesterday. You know, even though they have, you know, a house full of clutter and stuff and where are they going to move it, it seems like people don't always think through the whole process, and so they're not ready to move. Okay, I always like to kind of be real, as much fun as I can with my sellers, and I like to be kind of easygoing and make a few jokes about it, about the pre-inspection. And I'm like, well, you know, we want to find out as many problems as we can about your home, and I just kind of laugh about it, and it kind of breaks the ice a little bit. So you have to kind of have a little bit of humor, I think, at times. Sometimes we are our own worst enemies, okay? So we kind of have this notion of, gee, I don't really feel confident about this. I don't really like to talk about it. You know, I'm not really in favor of doing inspections myself. And a lot of agents aren't. They don't even want to address the topic. But I think sometimes you have to just kind of get yourself in the mode of getting in the habit of talking about it. And that's what I've done. That's what's really helped me is I talk about it in every appointment I go on, okay? So if I'm getting a lead for a possible listing, that's not when I'm talking about it. If someone is emailing me or texting me, I'm not talking about it then either. I'm going to be talking about this in person with them. So when I sit down at the table or we're at their house or whatever, that's when I talk about the pre-inspection. And why do you think it's better to talk about this in person versus emailing or texting or whatever?
We always go off visual cues.
Exactly. So you can read the person, they can read you if you're right in the same room, talking to each other, okay? What's another reason it's better to talk about it in person?
I used to sell years ago pianos and organs, and we knew if we ever got a home showing, it was sold.
Okay.
Once you got in the home with the instrument, they always bought. So
yeah.
Perhaps the same.
It's hard to walk away from somebody who's right there with you. isn't it? So a lot of times people are gonna be a lot more receptive to your product, in this instance, it's a pre-inspection, than if you're just on the phone or texting or whatever. So,
You carry your piano
Yeah,
yeah, who carried the piano in?
I was younger.
Okay. You have to believe in it. And, you know, I really am so, my brain is so like focused on this whole topic when I'm talking to people. I know I'm going to get it sold. You know, I know I'm going to get this way of selling real estate through. And in fact, I don't even really have anybody object to it anymore because they know I'm confident. They know I believe in it. They know I've had success with it. I will talk about my past successes with it. And before I even get this, you know, get everything out of my mouth, they're like, well, okay, can you go ahead and order this for me? And I will offer to do that. So we want pre-approved buyers. We want pre-approved sellers as well. Okay. So I think a lot of times I'm kind of a old school type of person. I mean, I have kind of scripted in my mind what I'm going to say to people, and I just tell them, you know, I've had a lot of success with pre-inspections. It's one of my proven systems. I know it works, and I want to talk more to you about it. And as you start to kind of develop some confidence words, you'll find yourself being able to really talk about it and be comfortable with it. Okay. So I do have, if you ever want to go onto my website, it's just tombracy.com, and I don't know if I mentioned it in anywhere, maybe near the end. I think it's on one of the slides, but I do have a 12 reasons why sellers should get a pre-inspection. Okay. And if you want that handout and if you want to put it in your listing presentation, you're welcome to use it. You just go to tombracy.com and under there's agent resources, and you can, you know, click on it. It's just a PDF you can print out if you want it. You're welcome to use it. Okay. So lots of reasons why it's important to get a pre-inspection. Okay. Now I'm not just talking about a whole house inspection. Okay, because as we're going to see in a minute, we'll get into some other things. I don't know if many of you sell rural properties. Any of you sell rural properties where you have septics and wells?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay, so those are not part of a typical whole house inspection. So there's all different kinds of inspections really that we've expanded into, and which I'm going to get into a little bit more detail here, but there's lots of moving parts to this whole pre-inspection thing. And again, it's one reason why it's kind of fascinating to me and how we can really make it work for us. Okay. I really want to know what I'm selling. Okay. And that's one thing I talk to my sellers about as to why it's so important, because I want to know what I'm selling. I want to know more about your home than I do my own home. Okay, I want to know what the condition of the roof is, the furnace, the septic, the whatever might be, the electrical situation in the home. Okay, what's the breaker box like? I want to know all about this stuff, because buyers are what today? What are buyers like today? Do they want to know everything? They want to know everything about everything. And so they want to know what they're buying. And they really appreciate it when you can put out there all these inspections, all this information about the home. It just makes everybody really happy. Okay? Again, you know, the for sale by owners are beating us up at times. So you're going to stand out as being an expert when you are taking the extra time to get this done. I do not believe in a one-stop listing appointment where you get a call, we want to sell our house, I'll be over at 6 o'clock, you have them fill out the papers and you stick a sign in and you go home. I don't believe in that. There was a day I did more of that, but anymore, I really like to be more thorough about it. Get the inspections done, we have something in our market, I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit, but where you can actually list the property and not make it active in our MLS for 30 days, 40 days, you have up to 45 days. So if they want to get their inspections done, if they want to get anything else done, something decluttering or some staging done or some repairs done, they have up to 45 days to do that. So you have the property listed, have a signed listing contract, and you don't have to worry about them running off or doing it for sale by owner or listing with someone else. So it really works really good. We might talk a little bit about that in a minute as we move ahead here, but home warranties, a lot of times your home warranties will be more lenient in working with pre-inspected properties as issues come up. Last year, I did a little bit of research on my own sales, and this is as of like October, and I haven't really updated it, but I went back 2 years and I took all my pre-inspected properties that went on the market, and the average day on market was 19 days, okay? I took the MLS average, so I went into the MLS for 2020, and it was 35 days, okay? So that to me is proof, to me anyway, that you're going to get the property pended quicker, you're going to close quicker, your advertising is reduced, you have less of everything to have to deal with. You can go on and list your next property instead of waiting, okay? And again, we have this form, and you don't have this in your market here, do you?
Coming soon, no.
Again, we can list properties down there and they not go active for 45 days, and I think I talked a little bit about that, so. Okay, I want to just ask you about, when you do inspections with your buyers, how do you handle that? I mean, do you go with your buyer? Do you wait there at the house with them? How do you normally do that?
We usually go along.
Yeah.
You go along, okay, and do you stay there the whole time, or what's your role in it?
We usually get there an hour after it starts, give the inspector an hour to start, and we are there the last hour. He can
Okay.
bring us up to speed in short order. And
Okay, is that pretty, most of you doing that, about an hour into it, you will go? Okay, we had one situation in our brokerage a couple of years ago where the agent went out with the buyer and they were following the inspector around, and the agent was making comments about the house, and the buyer, of course, was listening to their agent, and the inspector was really uncomfortable kind of with that. So, I mean, I can understand that in this particular situation, something came up with the house after closing, and the buyer kind of went after the realtor because the realtor was making comments about the house. And well, you said this and you said that. So I think you really kind of have to be careful about what your involvement is when you're going out, with your buyers on that, so. Okay, again, as the whole thing kind of evolves with all this information about inspections, the as-is thing comes up. And I don't know about your market, but we've had some confusion over what that really means. What does as-is really mean? So do you guys have something in your contracts that allow for an as-is sale?
You can put it in the agent remarks. I don't know if it's an actual. It would just be like something.
Yeah, in the listing that the property's to be sold.
I would put it in like the remarks.
Okay.
Agent remarks.
Okay. And then when they write the offer on the property, does the agent put in property to be sold as is, or?
Buyer, inspection for buyers, information only.
Okay. So it can get a little bit it can get a little bit confusing, I think, sometimes when we think of an as-is property. As is just means that it's in its present condition, right? So could a property be pre-inspected and still be sold as is? It sure can be, okay? So in my way of thinking, it's just the seller doesn't want to have to fix anything. So if you're doing your pre-inspection and you find out what you want to fix or what you don't want to fix, then you can, you're basically selling the property as is. So I think the pre-inspection actually even kind of helps clear that up, so they know exactly what they're buying and it's as is. Okay. So it can get a little bit confusing, I think, sometimes. Okay. Expectations, I think, are really important. So I think, what are you saying to your buyers when you're first kind of educating them, especially if they're newer first-time buyers? What kinds of things are you talking to them about as far as the property condition goes? Do you have any kind of set time that you take to explain to them about what they're buying?
But normally when I show up, I just kind of start picking it. I start from normally the roof down. Like when I walk up, I normally look at the roof, talk about the condition.
Great.
Big ticket items, pretty much mainly, like for sure the roof, although I always check on it.
Okay.
Make sure, whether it's a newer roof or has a couple of years left on it, I'm pretty knowledgeable about that. Start there.
Do you have like a background in construction?
Yeah.
Okay, so a roof is a big thing to you.
I still do sometimes. I can build a house myself, ground up if I really. I have numerous times, but I know the bones of the house pretty well, and so yeah, foundation. I start kind of. I don't try to. I always make sure I state that I'm not an inspector, and you will want this inspected. I just point out stuff. So, no, this is my opinion only, kind of thing.
Right.
Right.
What do you guys do for any kind of?
I like to use Ashley's definition of what we're looking for. That's usually anything that's gonna cost you more than $500 to fix.
Okay.
I like to try to bring it up to, let's make sure we keep, if we notice anything now, let's keep that off the, let's put it in our offer now instead of coming back on it,
Kind of nip it in the bud right away.
Yeah, so we're not doing that, causing more back and forth than we need.
Right.
I think it's an honesty thing.
Oh, yeah. I know Matt Marr does a lot of that when he's working with his buyers. He's taking them, he's showing them the property. He's really pointing out, this has this, notice that, notice this. So I think it's good that buyers are aware, especially your younger buyers that have never purchased a home before, to be aware of property conditions. However, if you take let's take your roof situation, for example. If it's in reasonably good condition, then that's really just kind of a typical expectation that it be in reasonably good shape. Is that your belief? Is that what you're kind of telling your buyers? That
What's that? Whether it's,
if you feel it's reasonably good condition, and okay, by looking at this roof, it probably hasn't at least 15 years left on it.
Yeah, 5. I normally tell if it's 3 tab. I kind of let them know 3 tab doesn't last as long as the architectural. I know the warranties on them and stuff.
Okay. So the expectations, I think, have to be there. We've all had the buyers who bring their parents along, or they're getting ready to make their offer, and they want every possible little flaw in the house fixed, right? Not going to happen. So that's an expectation we need to be explaining to them too, is what is in reasonably good condition? How is this property priced based on the condition it's in? Okay, so really expectations and accountability, I think, are really important. So all that stuff gets explained. I had an agent a couple of weeks ago who they went and saw the house, and a younger agent, great agent, really doing really well. And he shows the property, and of course the market's crazy, and everybody's, you know, probably gonna be putting an offer on this property. And he comes to my office and says, Tom, I said, this, you know, we want to ask, we had an inspection, they got the offer accepted, but it's subject to an inspection. And the inspection noticed a crack in the patio or something. And I said, well, you know, did you see it when you saw the house? No, we know it was at night and we were kind of going really fast through the house and we really didn't see it. And I said, you know, that's really not the seller's problem, because you really should have seen it. I mean, it's an obvious flaw, you know, in the property. And so he decided not to ask for that repair, and they were able to move ahead. But sometimes it's just a matter of really being thorough about what you're trying to sell people and what you are selling people. We tend to focus on these 4 things on the Quad City: structural, mechanical, safety, and health. So as we're educating our buyers, we have what's called a property condition acknowledgement form. And that form, I don't know if you have anything like that here, but what that form basically says is, you know, unless this house, unless we find something that is really falls into one of these categories, you know, let's say the furnace is emitting carbon monoxide. Okay, obviously that's a safety problem, right? So otherwise, you know, we don't really want to be nitpicking the house apart when we're making offers. And again, in this market, you really can't do that, or you're going to lose the house. So lots of things that kind of keep things accountable for both the buyer and seller, I think, are really important. Did they read the seller disclosure? You know, sometimes we're in a hurry, and the seller disclosure, it gets signed, you know, it kind of gets shuffled around in all the papers. They sign it, but they don't really read it carefully. Did you discuss home warranties? Home warranties will cover a lot of things: furnace, air conditioners, appliances, different things. So that can alleviate some of the problems that you have with a property that maybe wasn't pre-inspected. Okay?
Sell them without a fight.
Sell them without a fight is right. Okay, again, did they see it? Did you see it when you showed the property? Was it on the seller disclosure? Was there a pre-inspection? Was there a septic inspection that's already been done, or a water test that's already been done? So the more information that buyer saw ahead of time, the fewer reasons they should be asking for repairs, and the kudos to the seller for putting it all out there and reducing the chances of the deal going bad. Okay. Put it in writing. I mean, you can always put in writing, like we were saying, this property is being sold as is, and again, not necessarily because it's a rundown property, but we've already provided all the reports, we've provided all the information, and we should be good to go. Isn't it nice to go to a closing and just have a closing? You know, the attorneys aren't talking about, well, did they fix that, and what happened with this inspection, and how did that go, and you know, and then there's hard feelings can start coming out. I mean, it's good just to not have to worry about anything related to the property condition. Already been addressed. The closing is over in 15 minutes, and everybody's happy. I think Michelle told me here that you guys will actually have an addendum for that you create on the is it on the seller disclosure?
Actually, what we recommend is see addendum or see attached property condition report or inspection as an addendum to the seller property disclosure. That way you can prove that the buyer has seen it.
Yeah. And are you guys doing that, making sure that if they do receive a report, you have proof that they did get it? Have them sign a receipt, or have them sign the addendum that there was an inspection in this.
They always sign a property inspection report. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, anything that shows that the seller or the buyer saw it. You know, I kind of liken it to a receipt where you give somebody something, a proof that they have it.
we just get sent, most inspectors will send it to both of us.
So there's an email record of it.
Oh, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yep.
So some kind of proof that they have had it, and,
Had a real. So that's why we recommend that you make it an addendum.
So you said something about put it on the property disclosure or?
You make it an addendum to the seller
to the
property disclosure.
Okay,
Yep.
Gotcha.
Did we have a question?
I don't
We
know.
might have a question here.
oh, okay.
Oh, they say they're frozen.
Yeah, I froze up. I'm just not able to move the slides.
So if you have a pre-inspection for your listing, why would you want to share that report with a buyer?
Okay, good question. So the question was, if you have an inspection, why would you want to share it with the buyer? Is that right?
Well, yeah, because the liability is between the seller and the inspector.
Okay, I want to make sure that the seller's okay with it. So I'm going to ask the seller that, hey, we're going to get a whole house inspection done, and I want to make sure it's okay with you that we put this out on the MLS for all the agents to see it. And they're like, yeah, sure. I mean, that's the reason we're doing this. So we are disclosing everything we know about this property. So is that answering your question, or I'm sorry?
No, because I just use the inspection strictly for my purposes with the seller. We fix whatever we want to fix, and then buyers can go have their own inspection.
Oh, sure.
And we minimize the repairs we have to make, and there's no liability between the seller and the buyer because they've got their own inspection.
Right. And if buyers want to get their own inspection, I certainly, I tell the seller when we're listing the property and we're talking about these things, get them set. It's a property questionnaire. And I actually got some of the questions on the questionnaire from Concept, from OO. I think OO has a property questionnaire. So I'll have them fill it out. You know the age of your roof, your furnace, your
There's other companies that do it, but only a couple, I think. Companies
Okay.
that do it anymore.
Down in the Quad Cities, there's several plumbing companies that will do sewer inspections, and they're about $120, $110 to do. And again, that's not something that the whole house inspector is going to do. The whole house inspector is not going to really check the fireplace. I mean, they'll make sure that it basically is looking okay, and if it's a gas fireplace, that it works. But if it's an older chimney, if they have any concerns about it, they'll recommend that a chimney person look at the chimney. Termites, of course, are totally separate. In our market, we have termite inspectors that do that. Septic tanks, if you're out on your rural properties, and again, you mentioned the time of transfer reports, you have to have those. It's law. You can't transfer a title in Iowa without a septic inspection and a time of transfer report. So again, I grew up on a farm. I sell a lot of rural properties, so I am very adamant about making sure that septic tank gets inspected before we put it on the market, because there's so many things that can go wrong with them. And now they're, at least in Scott County, and I think a lot of these rules, there we go, the health department controls all that. So, there's no way of really getting around it because of the state requirements and the county requirements for septic tanks. I'm having one put in this week on a house down there. So, and then again, this is a typical report you get. It's called a time of transfer report that the attorneys have to have that at closing, and then that's how they can transfer that. This we probably, I don't know if we have time to see it, but you can, does that, if we
We should be able to do it.
okay.
Relax, Barn. Don't set out the car be yet a minute. This is just about the biggest thing I ever bought. It's a major step. Last big buy I made was my mom's and dad's anniversary present. What'd you get them? Septic tank. For the anniversary? Yeah. Oh, they're really hard to buy for them. Besides, it was something they could use. 2 tons of concrete, all steel reinforced. You're a fine son, Mark. Try.
So Barney bought his parents a septic tank for their anniversary. So when I retire, I'm going to write a book about septics, because it seems like there's so many stories I can just, they're kind of funny when you look back on them. But if you haven't sold a lot of rural properties, you're going to, if you do, you'll experience all kinds of situations. I mean, I've seen septic tanks that, they're 50 years old or whatever, and the seller, oh, it works fine, it works great, and we don't have any problem with it. And I'm like, well, we really need to get it checked because it's probably going to fail. And number 2, does the buyer want to buy a septic tank that's 50 years old? So you can actually, what I do is I'll just get it inspected, or if it's a really old system, I'll say, look, let's save the $2,000, forget the inspection. I'll get somebody to come out. We'll get an estimate for the septic, and we haven't even put the house on the market, right? So let's say the house is $300,000, and the septic is going to cost $15,000 to put in. So you just listed it $320,000 with a new septic, and it works great. I mean, you could do that with a roof. You could do it with about anything major to a property to not have to worry about it once you have a sale price already established on your offer. Now you got to go figure out how and who's going to pay for this septic tank, who's going to pay for the roof, who's going to pay for the $4,000 of electrical work that this house needs. So again, I'm not talking about scratches on the wall and cosmetic things. I'm talking about your major things that will kill a deal. Okay. Any questions? Our septic tank was new in 1981. I heard that one before. 50 years old. And then there's different things that you know, if you check with your county health department, you can give buyers about how to take care of their septic tanks and so on. So again, before listing, you know, these are things that the more simple things that a seller could do if you wanted to before they even put it on the market. Buyers can deal with these things later, you know, your cosmetic things, flooring, things like that. So again, buyers that are expecting these things to be part of the deal, we just have to really, again, make sure we explain that to them. Okay. And as I mentioned before, get your estimates. Again, we haven't listed the house yet. You can get your estimates. You can make sure that the repair gets done before the closing. You can raise your list price to compensate for it. And it really works well. You don't have to worry about the appraiser. I had an appraiser one time go out to a property. We just put both a roof and a septic on the house, and he's walking around. He calls me. He said, "What's all this dirt piled up in the yard, in the back of the yard?" I said, "Well, they just put in a new septic system." And so he was relieved to know that it has already been done. He can report back to his underwriter that it's done. So there's no escrow money needed or anything like that. It's all taken care of. So, do your attorneys here escrow for repairs?
Some do.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it seems like a deal I did a while back, we did something like that.
1.5 times.
1.5 times. Okay. So if it isn't done and things are going to where, you know, we're not doing the pre-inspections and trying to preempt a lot of these problems, then you're going to have to deal with doing escrows.
A lot of
Again-
times it seems like it has to be weather related, that you can't do
Right.
the repair because of.
Right. Yeah, they won't let you escrow unless it's a weather issue.
Right, so they got it to buyer or seller, it's whoever is willing to pay, whoever negotiates to pay for that.
I don't know, I've only seen the seller do it, but I
Mhm.
suppose the buyer could.
Comes out of the seller's proceeds.
Yeah, it's out of the seller proceeds.
Yeah. So again, I'll just market the property, I'll put it in the MLS. Price includes a new roof, new electrical, new septic, new whatever. And then the realtors love me down there. I mean, they just love me because I've got all this stuff on the MLS, all these documents, all these inspections. I've got everything on there, and they just write the offer, and the buyer sees all the documents, and they sign off on it, and we go to closing, get the loan, go to the closing. So we're seeing more and more agents wanting to do it and doing it. So it really works great. I think a lot of your younger buyers, they don't really want to, they just want to move in, you know, get the internet hooked up and watch Netflix, take their kids to soccer practice, and they don't want to have to deal with fixing stuff. So lots of good reasons that we've mentioned about it becomes a win-win for everybody. Our attorneys down in the Quad Cities in Scott County, I think they do it. Scott County is a very unique county in Iowa in that our title work is all done by abstracting. And do they do abstracting in this county, or mostly just title insurance, or?
Oh, we're all abstract in
You're all
Iowa.
abstracts here too.
All of Iowa. Yeah, the whole state.
Okay. Do you have to have an abstract here? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was an abstract state.
I know Scott, of course, Scott County's in Iowa too. So, but our attorneys do not like going to a closing and having to deal with stuff. They just want to get the closing done, so.
You have to have an Illinois and Iowa license, I'm assuming, since you're right there.
Yeah,
Pretty cut because of,
both sides. If you want to sell in Illinois and drive over the river, you have to have a license,
that'd be unfortunate. I want that house over the river. You
Yeah.
can't sell it to me.
Yeah.
And our closings here are actually a little smoother because we have closing companies that do that rather than just the attorneys.
Okay,
Which makes things go a little bit easier, and sellers don't have to go to closing. They sign everything ahead of time.
okay.
They still have sellers and buyers come to closing together
Where?
in
In the Quad
the Quad
Cities.
Cities.
Although I'll say this, COVID has
That
really
would be
changed that whole thing. So we're not going to the closings anymore. We're really getting the sellers to sign ahead with all that, the deed and all that stuff.
That's a
Sign.
great change for you guys.
It's a great change. Although I'm kind of old fashioned because I like to go to the closing.
Mhm.
I always thought it'd be cool to do it if they got along, obviously, but I always thought it'd be kind of cool, but I don't think I've ever done that. No,
It's not.
no. Bring some boxing gloves, maybe.
Yeah.
Here's a closing gift.
It's an unnecessary scheduling conflict for
Yeah.
your seller.
Every area is different, but I now that you mentioned that about the closing companies versus the attorneys, I think Scott County is pretty old fashioned that way with the attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I forgot your first name, I'm sorry.
Sunny.
Sonny mentioned the 1.5 times escrow. I mean, really, you guys, who wants to deal with all this stuff? It's just so much easier, just get all this stuff done ahead of time. Does it take longer? Yes. Is it worth it in the long run? Yes. So, I mean, I just like to have the deal done and go get the next listing and move on instead of taking so long to close one deal.
Are you frozen again?
I'm frozen. Well, there we go. Okay. Okay, so when do you not necessarily need to do everything I'm saying? Okay, I mean, I have sellers sometimes who, hey, Tom, I want to get my house on the market, really in a hurry, and, we're moving to Virginia, and, can we get it on the market? Okay, sure, fine, let's do that. And the only thing, there's a couple things that I'm really kind of concerned about. So we'll list the property, but we'll still do the inspections after we've listed it. So, there's all kinds of ways you can do this to keep the ball rolling so you don't lose out on the listing. I don't want anybody to lose a listing because the seller says they don't want to do things exactly the way I'm saying you should do them. You have to kind of flex, and you can get all kinds of things done while the property is on the market, okay? Okay, radon, what's less of a concern? Radon, isn't that a big concern to me? Do you guys have a lot of radon up here? You do, okay. We have our share of it down there too in Scott County, but I know how much it costs to mitigate it approximately. So I'm not as worried about it because we can negotiate that right at the beginning of the negotiations. I have them fill out a questionnaire, a property questionnaire. And if you want to go on my website and look under those documents that are resources for agent, there's a property questionnaire there. You're welcome to use that if you want to use it. So there's lots of information about the property that the seller's filled out. Maybe the seller's already done some things. Maybe they put on a new roof 2 years ago. They have all the paperwork for that. So that's in lieu of doing a whole house inspection. Maybe the house is only 2 or 3 years old and they just have very few things that they really are concerned about. Okay, if it's a bank-owned property, if it's a highly distressed property, if it's an estate, I mean, there's all kinds of variations where you don't really need to do it. If a property is a highly distressed property, why spend $500 in inspections when it's just as is? It's going to be an investor, right, that buys it. It's going to flip it or make it a rental property or whatever. I don't know if you've ever dealt with estates before and dealing with families and so on, but a lot of times they don't want to do it. And you have co-executors, they don't like each other. They fight about everything, brothers and sisters or whoever. So it's better not to do it in some cases and just sell the property.
I find the states are a really good time to do pre-listing inspection because you can tell the sellers or the executor, look, buyers are trained to look for a seller disclosure of property conditions when they're buying a house, or their agent's going to show them that, and they know that, but they're not going to get that because this property is exempt. And so we give them this, we do an inspection, and we give them a little bit more peace of mind that they would not otherwise have.
Absolutely.
And that
What was your
was-
first name? I'm sorry.
Paul?
Paul, that's a great idea. And it's a great way to explain doing an inspection in an estate type situation, because it's just going to make the whole thing a lot easier. So I think that's a great idea and a great comment. So thank you. So there's always exceptions. You just have to kind of go into every situation with an open mind, and if they only want to do one inspection and they don't want to do the whole house, or maybe they have a well and they only just want to get that checked out, that's fine. Just make sure you talk about it. Make sure you list the advantages of doing it. And the more you talk about it, the more confident you'll get about it, and you'll feel good about doing it, and everybody wins. It works out good. It has really worked for me well, and hopefully you guys will try it. Any of you think you would?
Yeah.
You already do it.
Besides the guy yesterday I'm dealing with,
What's with him?
he goes, I got irrigation system, but at the end it leaks like this son of a, you know what? And I said, oh, and he goes, well, he's like, well, wait till we get a good offer, then I'll let him know all the problems with this place. I started laughing so hard, and he's also listing it for about 30,000 more than I want. But, so it's just like, okay, it's gonna be fun. So some people, I know for sure there's certain people that I wouldn't even mention this to, but there's certain people I think more honest folks, you can say, hey, I mean, wouldn't you want to buy a house, knowing everything ahead of time and dipping, saving everybody time. And I think it's great.
Question for you with the number of pre-inspections that you do on the pre-inspected properties, how often do you have those fall out so that they have to go back on market?
I honestly can't think of one that did. I mean, if I sit down and really go through and think over the past several years, there maybe has been some, but off the top of my head, I can't think of any. It just go like a dream. And I'm not really one to exaggerate I'm not, it's the truth. I mean, I have no reason to not tell you the truth about it. So it really works great for me. And we have a few agents. I mean, it's really fun though, because I'm seeing a lot of our agents, Tom, I'm doing it. I tried it, and it's really working. And that same agent a year ago would have never done that. Never tried it, didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to go out on a listing appointment and even mention it. So I am seeing a lot of our agents starting to do it. That kind of is nice to see.
How do you handle the objection when you do a pre-listing inspection and then the buyer does an inspection, their inspector finds something that maybe your inspector didn't find?
Awesome question. It's Paul, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So awesome question, Paul. If the buyer wants to do their own inspection and they find something that was not in the original inspection the seller did, then my feeling is that we can either get another opinion, a third opinion about that situation, or the seller can just say, hey, okay, somehow my inspector missed that, I will take care of it. But it's usually pretty easily resolved, because it was up front to begin with that there was an inspection out there, and now we're finding something that we didn't find before. I think it works good because the buyer knows that at least the seller tried to provide me something, and they're trying to be honest, about their property. So I think that's good. But if they do find something, you're just going to have to put it on a repair request and see, who's willing to get it fixed.
So how do you go back to your seller? Your seller comes to you and says, hey, they're asking for this. I paid, $300, $400, $500 for an inspection, and your guy missed it.
Then we go back to the inspector and find out why. Did he check this part of the property? We have the report, we have all the photos, we have all the documentation, so, we're gonna go back to him and ask him how he missed it. But,
But if he says, oops, sorry, then you're like, oh, okay. All right, I'll get back, thank you.
it's not gonna go perfectly smooth every
Right.
time. You just have to cross the bridges when you get to them and get them fixed, get those repairs done. I would have a hard time believing that it was a major thing that the inspector would miss it, the first one would miss it, but I've never had that happen. Okay, I've never had that happen before.
I've never had it on my side, but my inspectors found things that a pre-listing inspection has missed in the
Okay.
past. So and I don't know how that agent dealt with it, but I'm just like, yeah, that's why we did our inspection anyhow. So.
Yeah. Okay, so Paul, here's what we're dealing with down there now that you mentioned that. We have the for sale by owner companies down there who will tell the seller, okay, well, we have an attorney for you, you don't need a realtor, we have an inspection, we have an appraisal, we have all this stuff, we'll give you a sign to stick in your yard, we'll do everything for you. And then they send an inspector out there for $150 who does a cursory inspection of the property. And it doesn't cover everything like we're saying, it should be covered. So then we go out with the buyer to show the property. The seller says, okay, we'll work out a commission with you to sell our property. Here's our inspection. And I'll go, well, we want to get our own inspection because this isn't a comprehensive inspection. And again, I just had that last year happen. We found we had a comprehensive inspection and it revealed things that this cursory inspection didn't reveal. And the seller basically had to kind of eat some crow, and we worked it out. We were able to negotiate the repairs. The buyer was willing to neglect or ignore some of them, but the seller did have to do some things to it too. So the sellers weren't real happy about it, but that's what happens when you FSBO your property, I guess. So.
Yeah, don't get me started on QC FSBO.
On what?
QCFSBO.com is the company that is really strong over there.
QC?
Yeah, Quad Cities.
Oh.
Yeah. Then it gets into a whole family thing with my brother-in-law. It's a whole other thing that we don't want to talk about. Sonny's heard part of it. All right. Any other questions or?
Thought I had one, but I can't. The QC thing threw me off.
We're too young for that.
No, I know, my mind, I think on too many things at once. I was gonna say, I've seen where inspectors actually do them at a discounted price, free inspections at a discounted price. Is that pretty common?
We don't do that down there. Our inspectors charge the same.
I've seen a couple guys trying to promote themselves as free, and I never thought of it until I seen the guy. The one guy's post, about free inspections.
No, it's the same price with our guys down there.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like we have any questions online either.
Well, thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Well, thanks, Tom.
You're welcome.
It's something I'll use someday. I'm glad
Well, let me know how it goes. Yes, I'll be curious.
I find it really useful on estates and on properties where the seller didn't do a home inspection when they bought.